Ryvius. You ever think about, you know, Lord of the Flies in space? That's what Infinite Ryvius is. A seemingly under-known show from the turn of the century. Ryvius takes place in the far future, where children train to be astronauts, or I guess flight attendants on space flights, and everything is screwed because the upper atmosphere of the Earth is completely uninhabitable because of radiation, which spawns these weird squid-like sentient beings. It's kind of messed up, honestly. Like, it is a certainly strange take on the possible future, but it's better than I thought it'd be. Because a lot of these space shows from the turn of the century are very hit or miss when it comes to the quality of them. Some of them lean way too serious, or lean way too much into the camp. And I think Ryvius is a very serious show in terms of like the subject matter and the character motivations and kind of their backstories and the intermittent drama. But it does try to have its lighter moments, which I think I really enjoy. It is, of course, not a show without its issues. For its timing, it's not the prettiest show. I don't really love the aesthetic. It's not the most aesthetic show of this time period. Ship design's kind of very bland. Even the mech design is just kind of non-existent and kind of very standard and doesn't have a lot of personality to it. So in terms of like design and even the characters themselves, I think the show is not pretty. And I don't particularly like any of the character designs in the show, whether they be the main cast, supporting cast, the sentient moss, the parasite yeast clusters, wherever they are, that pilot these ships. I don't find them particularly interesting, neither the ship nor the mech designs. None of them really stand out to me as something that is inspired in any capacity. So like, if we're going purely off aesthetics, that kind of knocks it a little bit. It's not the most pretty show I've ever seen. It's a real aesthetic flavor, a la Ava or even Gundam, to kind of stand out from anything that was coming around the time zone. So I think knocks points for that. But what Ryvius really has that kind of goes for it is the drama and the character interactions between them, because the story's pretty not box standard, but not very dramatic really. Bunch of kids get trapped on a space station. Turn out the space station is a incredibly powerful spaceship with a mech that is hopefully going to save the universe from the radiation zone that's slowly killing the planet. And they because of the existence of this ship is hidden, they become wanted enemies by the entirety of the space force, and so they have to just kind of surviving it to safety. And the story's about them making the attempt. So like, it's not a story with a bunch of tricks and turns. Like, there's some pretty obvious things that's going to happen. It doesn't really profound you with what it's got to say. It's kind of just like, what if we did Lord of the Flies, but in space? Literally. I mean, that's just kind of what it is, and I like it for that. It's not trying to do too much or really say anything. Like, shows that have a message are kind of hit or miss depending on what the message is and how it comes across. Ryvius is, I wouldn't say lack of message, but lack of an overbearing one that is really trying to get across. I find refreshing, considering all the media that comes out today. I sometimes like just a story that's trying to tell its story and not much else. But what really, as I said earlier, ties the show together is its interpersonal relationship between the cast, whether it be the Aiba brothers and their various love interests and their friend Yuki and Kumi, Blue and his gang, and how everyone's just kind of relationships twist and turn is what you're really watching for. Like, you're watching to see how people turn on each other or create these alliances, or how relationships eventually pan out. Will they get together or will they betray each other? How does being cramped in space, with a limited food source for so long, turn on people? That's really what you're here for. And if we're talking about main characters, Koji's not the worst. Like, I know mech shows in particular kind of interestingly kind of conflicting with the shonen action shows that I feel like are kind of the competing forces at this time, before and even after to this day, even though mech is kind of a dead genre at this point. It's typically a lot of these mech shows have very weak protagonists, including Gundam. I mean, the majority of the Gundam main characters, even to this day, are not very interesting. They're very bland. They kind of have this soloed out story. They're very what we would consider wimpy, kind of very backseat characters who kind of just let things happen to them and then they react rather than, being proactive in their stories. And that kind of works. That's kind of the point of Gundam. Like these are children. Like, these are children fighting in a war. I'm not. You should hope these children are not out there being the aggressors and trying to push things from immediately. That's how you get Gundam Thunderbolt, which is awesome in its own right, and I will talk about that at some date. And you have things like Ava, where everyone is always talking about Shinji getting the mech, always making fun of Shinji for just being so wimpy and feminine and just kind of reluctant to take up the mantle he's given upon him. And I don't blame him. He's a 14, 15-year-old child who has to defend the world from demonic quote unquote aliens who are trying to murder everything he loves and everyone he knows and everyone on the planet. I would be very apprehensive to do that too if as a 14-year-old. So like, I get it, but well, yes, like all these mech shows, the main characters are not very proactive and very interesting. It's not like Gundam Iron Blooded Orphans where the main characters are trying to get their own freedom and make their own way. Like most of these mech shows do not have those kinds of protagonists, and Koji, which I guess this is a mech show now that I think about it more. I mean, I said that, but it is a show based on a mech, and that mech is what keeps them alive for the latter half of the series. So like, and Koji's not really the one who kind of drives the mech. He's kind of the person we see the lens of the story through, but he's not really the mech pilot. He's kind of just the guy who can see and first identifies the magic person who kind of makes everything work. But if I contrast that with a lot of shonens, Goku, Naruto, Ichigo, Luffy, they're very big personalities who kind of drive their stories, and that's just kind of how these two genres kind of conflux. Not every shonen main character is an aggressive story pusher, and not every mech show protagonist is very passive. I mean, Lelouch exists, and Lelouch literally organizes everything that happens in his entire story for the most part. Getting past that, though, I like Ryvius for its dynamics, and if you don't really like the character dynamics, the show doesn't have a ton to offer you. Like I said, the story is not the world-breaking. The designs and the animation is not the prettiest or the most advanced or anything eye-popping. Like nothing in the show is really going to grab your attention outside the 90s, like, quote unquote punk gothic aesthetic of the aliens, slime creatures who pilot the ships and their manifestations as humans. Outside of that, everything is very bog standard military or simplistic future tech. Like nothing out there is going to absolutely blow you away with how revolutionary its design is. That's not what this show is. The show is, we have these 500 or so kids trapped on this ship. What happens when they have no adult supervision and have to create their own society and try to survive for several months? I think it's like half a year in totality from the beginning of the show to the end, or to the end of the main story. So like, there's a lot of ways it goes, and I think it does a good job with that. I think watching, the Aiba brothers have to go their own paths. Koji's kind of like the beginning, the operator of the ship. He's got a very high status at the very beginning, and by the end, he's kind of a nobody, kind of an outcast. Someone who doesn't quite fit with what the major administration wants to do, and eventually he has to go beyond and have all the help of the other outcasts to kind of push through the barriers and save everyone's life at the end of the day. Meanwhile, Yuki is the younger, more brash brother who just hates his older brother because he's tried to be his dad. Like, that's literally the reason he hates him. And because of his ability with piloting the mech, he gets special status, and he maintains that throughout the entire show because the man who controls the weapons controls everything in the situation. And once Ikumi Uze, the other friend, the friend of, the older Ida brother, Koji, finally snaps after his girlfriend gets attacked because she gets special status because she is Ikumi's boyfriend, or girlfriend, he kind of turns into a dictator. Everything goes by his rules. We will do everything by military force, and if you don't comply, he is not afraid of killing some kids in order to get what he wants. Like, Ikumi is a very aggressive character. I mean, he kind of starts off as a good guy trying to save everybody, and once he gets personally hurt by the outcome of the situation, that all goes away, and he's like, I will do anything to protect her because I have an incestual relationship with my sister, and my girlfriend reminds me of my sister, so I will do everything I can to protect her, so I couldn't protect my sister from killing herself. Kind of a weird story overall. So like, it be like that sometimes, I guess. It's a weird motivation story. Kind of weird champ, pal, but it is what it is. And you've got Blue and his gang of misfits who kind of become enforcers by the end, except for Blue, who's kind of ostracized because he's the guy with the gun who is willing to use it to, do whatever he wants. and give his power, and then when he's deposed, he has to hide out, and it's only because of Koji's kindness that he even survives to the end, And there's a lot of minor characters that kind of influence the story. A lot of the no characters who had to pop in and pop out, kind of have their relevance for parts of the story, kind of fade in and out. And then you've got the final major character I'm going to talk about today. Well, I guess I'll mention two. Uh, Koji's girlfriend, Aoi, who kind of is like the moral grounding of the story, who kind of, tries to be good and see the right face on everything. But then one of the other character I'm going to mention, her relationship with Koji is not going the way she wants because he's still attached to Aoi. And so to kind of kill her past, she tries to kill Aoi. And once Aoi's entire world goes upside down because she gets tried to murdered, she gets very, 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 very paranoid and kind of relies on Koji being around her 24/7, protecting her to make sure she doesn't go crazy and just lose her mind, because she's kind of put up a brave face throughout all this, and then finally everything comes crashing down on both of them, and they kind of have a mental break, and they kind of find solace in each other, which is a very sweet and tender moment. But the character who I personally am not the hugest fan of, she kind of is she's kind of a little bit of a unlikable person, I'll say that, is Fina, who is the psychotic cult leader who murders people who know about her past and will do anything she can to keep people from knowing who she is. She's the one who tried to kill Oi. She's the reason Koji kind of gets thrown away at the end and try to disperse into the lower levels. So, I don't like her. She's very manipulative, very psychopathic, sociopathic probably too, whatever those words actually mean. I don't like her. And I think she makes a good kind of villain, because she's like, there's not really a villain amongst the main cast. Everybody has their kind of motivations. Everybody's kind of doing what they can to help each other in the way they think is best. Sure, for Blue and his gang, it was very, very good for them. They got a good deal because they got all the power and all the benefits, while, having the ability to kind of control everything. And meanwhile, everybody else kind of has to deal with what little they got. I guess Stein is also a villain, because Stein is like, we must be eugenic and how things go, very much focusing on the best will rise to the top, and anybody else who is interfering with that is not worth it, so let's kill them. Kind of a weird way to go about it, but he brings it interesting because he kind of removes all the emotion out of it, except for when he doesn't, because he personally dislikes Koji and Aoi, despite the fact that they're not lower ranking, or Julie, who is also the very best girl in the entire show, like in terms of ability, but she's got no spine, so she gets blown away in the wind. Stein hates them because they interfere with his plans, that he believes the best would rise to the top, and so he deranks them. So, he doesn't let his emotions kind of get to him until the very final arc, when everything is cultivating in the final showdown between them and the Solar System Defense Force, whatever the name of it is. His emotions kind of fall flat there, and then, kind of puts everything away. They kind of put everybody on the ship with the tech mech, and it's like, if we're going to go down, we're going to get as many of the people as we can on this mech and abandon the big ship, because the big ship is just going to get exploded. Meanwhile, if we can kind of get on the smaller ship of the mech, we got a chance to survive. For a show that doesn't have a lot going for it narratively, it really relies on you loving the characters, and I don't love the characters. I like the characters. I like all of them, except for maybe Fina. Even someone as stupid as Luxon, who is just incompetent, but is a good charismatic leader, he has his place. People like Ikumi's girlfriend, Izumi, kind of gets abused and causes Izumi to go on his death spiral. She has her purpose, and she's likable. Criff, the kind of slutty girl who picks on Turtleland, she's got her own voice, and she plays a vital role at the end. And Cullen, who kind of tries to seduce Yuki, and she has her place. Everyone's got their place, and I find them likable, except for really Fina. Even Stein, who is a genius, but is very logical in how he approaches things, and tries to manipulate everything to his benefit and of his eugenics plan. They're all likable enough, and they all play their role, and I think it's a good enough role where you'll walk away from the show being like, yeah, I like that, because it's likable. It's not a stellar show. It's not some lost gem of the late '90s, early 2000s, because it came out in '99 and ended in 2000. Like, it's not some hidden gem that you'll go back and look like, oh yes, I love it. This is something that everyone should know. Like, it's just kind of like a nice Kino little show that came out and tells its story and kind of goes away, and there's really not much more you need to do after that. You're just gonna consume it and enjoy it, and if you like it, you can go back to it. If you don't, not something that's really gonna stick with you. Like, it's a nice, palpable little 26 episode show that you can watch and enjoy. Like, and I think we need more of that. Not everything has to be this big epic series with all these twists and turns and everything that has to be everything has to be so big and bombastic and overflowing and it touch every part of your life. Small little shows like this, and kind of like Rossifon, which is kind of just a Ava ripoff that I talked about earlier. Like, they're just good little shows that you can enjoy and go away from, and kind of think back on it. Maybe, hey, I want to watch that again, and just enjoy it for what it is. And I think that's Kino, and I think people might enjoy it.